The mining station Kepler 442 hung in the void like a metal tumor against the purple nebula that painted the surrounding space in shades of violence. Captain Marcus Chun pressed his palm against the observation deck's reinforced viewport, watching the approach vector of the diplomatic vessel that carried representatives from the Draconic hegemony. 23 races had tried to establish peaceful contact with the dragons over the past century. 23 races had failed, their diplomats returning as broken shells of their former selves, if they returned at all. Captain, incoming transmission from the hegemony vessel, Communications Officer Torres announced from her station. Chun straightened his uniform jacket, a nervous habit he developed during his 15 years of service. Put it through audio only. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a voice that seemed to carry the weight of ancient mountains. Human vessel, you will prepare a single representative for audience with High Inquisitor Vextar, the Pale Death. Your representative must meet the Inquisitor's gaze during negotiations. Failure to maintain eye contact will be interpreted as deception and result in immediate termination of talks. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in uncomfortable silence. Chin's tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Park, shook her head slowly. Sir, no species has ever successfully maintained eye contact with an albino dragon. The Xantharians lasted 30 seconds before their ambassador went catatonic. The Calarian delegate managed 45 seconds and never spoke again. Chin pulled up the files on his personal tablet, scrolling through decades of failed diplomatic attempts. The albino dragons were rare, even among their own kind, born perhaps once every 1,000 years with scales like polished bone and eyes that reportedly contained the cold fire of dying stars. They served as inquisitors and truth-seekers for the hegemony, and their gaze was said to strip away all pretense, all lies, all the comfortable illusions that lesser beings use to shield their minds from reality. What about using augmented reality contact lenses, suggested Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, the station's xenopsychologist. We could filter the visual input, reduce the psychological impact. The dragons would detect any technological interference, Chen replied. Their sensors are more advanced than anything we have. They consider an insult and attack immediately. The mining station was humanity's most remote outpost, established to harvest the rare trilithium crystals that formed in this system's unique stellar conditions. But the dragons claimed this territory as part of their ancient migration routes, and 3 months ago they had issued an ultimatum: negotiate a settlement or face total annihilation. Chen had seen what dragon warships could do. The Proxima incident had left an entire human colony as radioactive dust. Sir, Torres called out, we have someone requesting permission to volunteer as our representative. Chen frowned. Who? Ensign Maya Santos from the geology team. She says she has relevant experience. Chen almost laughed. What relevant experience could a 24-year-old geology ensign possibly have with facing down creatures that have broken the minds of seasoned ambassadors? 10 minutes later, Chen understood why Torres had forwarded the request. Maya Santos sat across from him in his ready room, her personnel file open on his desk between them. Born on the frontier world of New Appalachia, she had grown up in the underground mining tunnels where her parents worked the dangerous deep veins. At age 12, she had been the sole survivor of a cave-in that trapped her family's entire work crew for 6 days in complete darkness. I spent those 6 days staring into absolute nothing, Maya said, her voice steady and matter-of-fact. Not just darkness, Captain. The kind of complete sensory deprivation that makes your brain start creating things that aren't there. Hallucinations, voices, shapes moving in the black. I learned how to hold on to myself when everything around me was trying to make me let go. Chun studied her face. Maya was small even by human standards, barely 5 feet tall, with calloused hands and the kind of quiet confidence that came from surviving things that should have killed her. Her psychological profile showed remarkable stress resistance, but this was different from anything she had ever faced. The dragons aren't just scary, Ensign. According to every report we have, Their gaze literally rewrites neural pathways. It's not about being brave. It's about fundamental biology. Maya nodded. Yes, sir, I read the files. But there's something the other species might not have that humans do. We're persistence predators. Back on Earth, our ancestors hunted by just walking after their prey for days or weeks until it collapsed from exhaustion. We don't give up. We endure. She leaned forward slightly. Captain, I've been studying the geological surveys of this system for 3 years. There are trilithium deposits here that could power human civilization for the next 1,000 years. The dragons don't even use trilithium. To them, this is just empty space they migrate through once every few decades. But for us, this could mean the difference between expansion and stagnation. Chin closed her file and looked directly at her. You understand that if you fail, you'll likely spend the rest of your life in a psychiatric facility, assuming the dragons don't just kill you outright. I understand, sir. But someone has to try, and I think I have the best chance of anyone on this station. 3 hours later, Maya stood in the station's main docking bay as the Dragon shuttle extended its docking tube. The hegemony vessel was massive beyond easy comprehension, its hull covered in scales that seemed to shift color in the nebula's light. The shuttle that emerged from its belly was smaller, but still dwarfed anything in the human fleet. Dr. Reeves checked Maya's vital signs one last time through a medical scanner. Heart rate elevated, but stable. Neural activity shows high focus, but no signs of panic. Maya, remember what we discussed about anchoring techniques? Maya nodded, adjusting the simple gray diplomatic uniform she wore. No weapons, no technology beyond basic life support, nothing that could be interpreted as threatening or deceptive. Focus on something real and tangible. Count heartbeats. Remember the weight of my feet on the ground. The docking bay filled with the sound of metal connecting to metal, followed by the hiss of atmospheric equalization. The airlock cycled open, and the first dragon Maya had ever seen in person stepped through. The escort dragons were impressive enough, their scales gleaming like polished emeralds, standing nearly 8 feet tall on their hind legs. But when High Inquisitor Vextar emerged from the shuttle, the very air seemed to grow heavier. Vextar was larger than the escorts, nearly 10 feet in height, and their scales were indeed the color of ancient bone, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They wore no clothing or ornamentation, their natural form being all the majesty they required. But it was the eyes that made Maya's breath catch in her throat. They were not the color of dying stars, as the reports had claimed. They were the color of stars being born, white-hot, and infinite, containing depths that seemed to stretch beyond the physical constraints of the dragon's skull. When Vextar's gaze swept across the assembled humans, Maya watched Captain Shun and Dr. Reeves involuntarily step backward, their faces going pale. I am High Inquisitor Vextar. The dragon spoke, their voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Maya's bones. Which of you claims the courage to meet my gaze? Maya stepped forward, and for the first time, those impossible eyes focused directly on her. The impact was immediate and overwhelming. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff that dropped away into infinity, like trying to hold her footing in a hurricane of pure thought and ancient wisdom. The dragon's gaze seemed to pierce through every layer of her being, examining not just her thoughts, but the very structure of her consciousness. She felt Vextar probing the edges of her mind, testing her resolve like a geologist testing the integrity of a rock face. Maya reached for the anchoring techniques Dr. Reeves had taught her, but they seemed pathetically inadequate against the cosmic weight of the dragon's attention. Instead, she thought about the darkness. The 6 days in a collapsed mine, when she had been 12 years old and certain she would die. She remembered the feeling of her family's bodies growing cold beside her, remembered the way hunger and thirst had combined with absolute sensory deprivation to create a hell that no child should have to endure. But she had endured it. She had sat in that darkness for 6 days and nights, and when the rescue teams finally reached them, she had been the only one still sane. She had learned something in that darkness about the core of human stubbornness, about the simple refusal to let go of herself no matter what tried to take her away. Interesting, Vextar said, and Maya realized that 30 seconds had passed without her looking away. You anchor yourself not in light, but in darkness survived. Most beings try to shield themselves with pleasant thoughts when facing our truth. You embrace the worst thing that ever happened to you and use it as strength. Maya found her voice, though it came out rougher than she had intended. High Inquisitor, humans don't break easy. We're built for endurance. One of the escort dragons shifted uncomfortably, clearly not expecting a continued conversation at this point. Maya could feel sweat beating on her forehead, and her heart was racing so fast she worried it might be audible. But Vextar's eyes remained fixed on hers, and she refused to look away. Your species wishes to mine the trilithium in this system, the dragon said. It wasn't a question. Yes, we need it for our expansion into this sector, but we're willing to negotiate terms that respect your migration routes. And what would you offer in exchange for access to what we consider our ancestral territory? Maya had prepared for this question, but under the weight of the dragon's gaze, her carefully rehearsed diplomatic language seemed hollow and inadequate. Instead, she spoke from her gut. We offer partnership. Humans are good at finding things, at solving problems, at surviving in places where we shouldn't be able to survive. Your people are ancient and wise, but you don't seem to enjoy the kind of detailed, dirty work that humans excel at. We could be useful to each other. Vextar's head tilted slightly, the first change in their posture since the conversation began. Elaborate. Your territories span dozens of star systems, but your population is relatively small. You can't possibly survey and catalog every world, every asteroid, every resource. Humans are good at that kind of systematic exploration. We're also good at maintenance work, at building infrastructure, at all the tedious tasks that keep civilizations running. Maya paused and took a calculated risk. And humans are good at fighting when we need to be. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and having allies who don't give up might be valuable to you. For nearly a full minute, neither of them spoke. Maya could feel the dragon's gaze like a physical weight, pressing against her consciousness, testing every word she had spoken for deception or weakness. Her legs began to shake slightly from the strain, but she kept her eyes locked on those impossible white-hot stars. Your proposal has merit, Vextar finally said, but the negotiation is far from complete. Can your resolve survive 3 more audiences with me? Human Maya Santos. The use of her name sent a chill down Maya's spine. She hadn't introduced herself, which meant the dragon had somehow pulled the information directly from her mind during their staring contest. I can, High Inquisitor. We shall see. Tomorrow at this same hour, you will present detailed terms for your proposed partnership. If you can continue to meet my gaze while defending your species' interests, we will consider your words. If you falter, your people will have 48 hours to evacuate this system before we reduce your station to component atoms. Vextar turned and walked back toward the shuttle, followed by their escorts. Only when the airlock sealed behind them did Maya allow herself to sag against the nearest bulkhead, her whole body shaking with exhaustion and adrenaline. Dr. Reeves was beside her immediately, medical scanner in hand. Maya, are you all right? Your neural activity was off the charts, but somehow remained stable. I'm okay, Maya managed, though her voice was hoarse. Just tired, like I've been running a marathon inside my own head. Captain Chin approached, his face pale, but impressed. Ensign, what you just did was unprecedented. No one has ever maintained eye contact with an albino dragon for over 2 minutes, much less carried on a coherent negotiation. Maya nodded, still catching her breath. The hard part's just beginning, Captain. I have to do it twice more, and each time I think it's going to be harder. Vextar is learning how my mind works, figuring out my weaknesses. She straightened up, some of her natural determination returning. But we have something they haven't seen before. We have human stubbornness, and sometimes that's enough. Maya spent the night in the station's observation lounge, watching the dragon vessel hang motionless against the nebula's purple glow. Sleep had been impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she could still feel the weight of Vextar's gaze, like staring into the heart of a supernova. Dr. Reeves had warned her that the psychological aftereffects could be severe, but Maya found herself oddly calm. She had survived the first encounter, which was more than anyone had expected. But she knew the real challenge was just beginning. Ensign Santos. Captain Chen's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him approaching with 2 cups of coffee and a data pad. Thought you might need this. Maya accepted the coffee gratefully. Thank you, sir. I assume those are the formal negotiation parameters. Chen nodded, settling into the chair beside her. Our best legal and diplomatic minds worked all night on this. Trade agreements, territorial boundaries, resource-sharing protocols, mutual defense pacts. Everything we think the dragons might be interested in. Maya scrolled through the documents, noting the careful language and detailed subsections. This is good work, but Vextar isn't interested in standard diplomatic protocols. They want to see how humans think under pressure, how we solve problems when everything is on the line. What do you mean? Maya set down the datapad and looked out at the dragon's ship. Yesterday, when I was facing them, I could feel them reading my thoughts, not just my words. They were looking for something specific, some quality that makes humans different from all the other species they've encountered. She paused, organizing her thoughts. The Xantharians are brilliant negotiators, but they broke under the dragon's gaze. The Calarians are renowned for their mental discipline, but they couldn't maintain eye contact either. So what makes humans special? Chen frowned. Our persistence, like you mentioned yesterday. Deeper than that, I think it's our relationship with suffering. Maya turned to face him. Every other species that's tried to negotiate with the dragons probably came with their best and brightest, their most comfortable and confident leaders. But humans? We send a survivor of a mining accident. We're the only species that seems to get stronger when things go wrong. 24 hours after the first